this movie is, well, I mentioned that you guys might see a quarantine kitty, but like it is, it's not a quarantine movie, but it is set during the quarantine in the beginning of COVID. And so for you as a director, how did you kind of want to frame that? Because it's funny to me now watching this movie, watching them be like, we only have to wash our hands, and
Right.
being like, yeah, we did think that that's all do for a while.
Totally, but as I mean, we were really careful with making sure that we didn't lean one way or the other. So we wanted it to be like the genesis of the entire story was like they have to leave to this house because of the quarantine, because they needed quarantine and get out of New York. Because at that point, hey, this little kitty, uh, we thought like maybe the bridges were going to close or the tunnels were going to close. So like you must get out immediately, right? That was the whole
Mhm.
idea. And people didn't want it. I remember not wanting to touch the elevator. I was doing everything with my elbow and kicking doors open and the whole thing. And the toilet paper and all that was a lot of the funny stuff we thought about that we wanted to show in the film, but we didn't want it to be about someone getting sick. We never ever showed it. We never leaned in one side saying, get your vaccines or any of that stuff. So we just wanted to be the impetus of the entire story. Um,
And
but there was some heartfelt parts like that we wanted to give an ode to the first responders where I think people hopefully when they revisit the film they'll at least hopefully get a little emotional when they see the banging of the pots and all that, which is like it's us saying thank you to the first responders.
yeah, and I think, sorry, I
No,
think
no worries.
that's what happens when you get a wonderful, wonderful, uh, you know, quarantine pet. And so in something like Who Invited Charlie, it does tell you the story of two friends who, like, in the midst of all this quarantine, it is two friends who grew apart, and we learn a lot about them throughout the movie. And so for you as a director, what was kind of the joy in getting to tell that story and that relationship?
Well, it's also like two buddies that probably were the yin to the yang in college, and one was really, as you can see in the dialogue or hear in the dialogue, it's they were good friends, but one always annoyed the crap out of the other, and having now to um, be stuck with him under the same roof where you can't leave and your whole family's about to fall apart and then you realize that he is the guy who's going to glue your family together is like the irony, but at the same time it's the last person you ever want to be in the same house as you is who bothers you for everything. Now your whole family is accepting him. It's almost like a What About Bob, where you're the only one that hates this guy, and your kid is and your wife is now like, why, what's the problem with this guy? Like he's so cool, and it's just making things worse, between the both friends.
Yeah, and it is one of my favorite parts about this movie is when they're they're driving on the beach, and it is like, for I guess, foreshadowing in a way that this child's going to steal a car and try and drive it into the ocean. And when I talked to Peter earlier this week, I said, I was like, there's like a couple moments in movies and TV recently where people think that they can just drive cars into the ocean, and it doesn't work like that. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah, like it's very funny because I've seen like dramatic movies where people are like trying to do this. And then to see it in a comedy, I was like, oh, it's so funny because it's a kid who's like, I'm just so mad I'm gonna drive a car into the ocean. And you're like, it doesn't work that way, buddy. But having that moment, which is very emotional, and you're seeing this kid kind of finally break because his dad has kind of been a jerk to him so for so much of this uh pandemic and situation, and seeing him break but also making that still like humorous, because you're like, yes, a kid would think he could just drive a car into the ocean and get
Right.
back at his dad. For you as like a director, how do you as Javier find that balance and make sure that your actors are also kind of finding it within that scene, because it works because it's dramatic, but also we're laughing at this exact same time.
Right. I mean, it's his prized possession, so that's what he wants to do. He wants to take his prized possession that he loves so much, probably, and he at some point feels that he loves this even more than he loves him. Basically, he feels like the car is more special than his son is, and he
Mhm,
just wants to destroy it. But I think, the good thing about this film is like Adam and Reed and Jordana they're so funny, and the chemistry between them. They can improv and riff, and wow, the things that come out of and just the dialogue, it gets funnier and funnier every single time. But there's also moments where you balance out that you got to also pull on the drama in order to make the funnier moments funny, right? So it all
mhm,
makes sense. I think it's funny. I think a lot of the other parts are funny is because of the peaks and valleys that you have, right? And this in that specific um scene, it was a valley, right? Like you have to, like, it really get to what is why he wants to like sink the car, and it unravels. It opens a can of worms with basically his entire family drama, right? The mom comes out, and there's a lot of spoilers that come out of this scene, but it's
mhm.
a very heavy specific scene.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned improv and stuff, and so I do have to ask because when I did my interviews earlier, I was told that the Wonderwall scene was just a conversation that you started rolling on because I asked, I was like, "So do you know Wonderwall?" And it was a whole thing about how I guess Adam Pally and him were just talking about the scene. And so was that improv, and how much do you let them kind of play on set? Because I know I
Well,
used to do UCB, so like I know like
right.
sometimes improv can go off the rails very
It
quickly.
does, it does. But I mean, look. So with Adam, he's so good that you tell him this is a scene structure, this is what we want to do, and you just let him go, and he hits
Mhm,
the specific points. But he's a trained improv actor as well, right? So
mhm.
a lot of that was him feeding off the kid, not Peter, not knowing. I mean, he wasn't really alive when, or he was very young when Oasis was. But the whole thing there is we didn't have the rights for them to sing the song, right? So we were praying on our hands and knees that you know Noel Gallagher could come back to us and charge us the price of the film, right? In order to clear that song. We were lucky. We wrote like this Dear Noel letter to him. Can you please watch this movie? And I guess he watched the movie and approved it. And our editor, his dad, I think cut uh, another film that they tried to get the rights for the Oasis song, and they just got rejected.
Oh my
So
God.
so we were really scared that we weren't get the rights for that. But the whole scene was basically Adam. He was improvising on stuff of 90s stuff that PD wasn't well versed in because he was so young, So he
Yeah,
didn't
Peter
know.
made sure to tell me, he's like, I like older music. I just don't like like he kept being like, I don't like Oasis, but I know older stuff. I was like, okay. I was like, I
Oasis has
just
some hits.
felt
Yeah, I just think it's before his time, so he just
I was
doesn't
like, I've
really.
never felt older than being like, wait, you don't know who Oasis is?
Yeah.
With this movie though, it is kind of, I said it's hitting that sweet spot of being released when we're ready to kind of like take in stuff set during the pandemic. And it is such a sweet story as a whole that I think people are going to like it, even if they're like, I don't really want to watch something about when we were in lockdown. But for you as a director, what is kind of the joy of getting to release it now, and what do you hope audiences take away?
I mean, also like the nervousness or concern was, is it too soon? Do people want to watch a pandemic, based film? But I think everyone has some story of them quarantining to some extent, I hope, right?
Mhm.
um so they can look back and take the good moments, because there's also people got a lot closer, I feel, or people went the other way too. Maybe they found a second beat in their life where, because of the pandemic, they're able to enjoy now. But I would rather them take the good parts, and the how living in a house together could just bring the good parts of everyone and enjoying, to be honest.
Yeah. And I mean, Adam did call me a Charlie because I got stuck at my mom's for like, I live in New York, but I got stuck at my mom's for a lot of the pandemic. And so he goes, oh, so you were her Charlie? Yeah, I
No,
guess
you were her
technically I
Charlie.
was. Technically I was because I got stuck down there. we had been on vacation. So I was like, well, yeah, I did. I got stuck in North
That's awesome.
Carolina.
How long were
Uh,
you there for?
7 months. It ended up working
You
out because
definitely
like
were her Charlie. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I got to spend time with her and my dad ended up like passing away not that long after. So it was
Oh,
like
sorry to
nice
hear.
thank you, but it was nice in retrospect because I'm like, oh, I had
Right.
all this time that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But I
And
was like,
that's
oh, I am
when
Charlie.
you ask me, that's exactly what I hope. Like, they can go back and take the good parts of the
Hmm.
quarantine. And there's you had to spend a lot of time with people one on one. So I feel like everyone has a story that they can kind of get nostalgic about when they watch
Yeah,
Charlie.
definitely. I can't wait for audiences to get to see it. I loved it a lot. I think it's very sweet, and I can't wait to see the rest of your work. I think
Thank you.
this movie was so beautiful at times. I was like, oh, I love this. It's so pretty to kind of watch this movie. So like,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you so much for talking with me today. I really
Awesome.
appreciate it. Have a
Talk
great
to you soon.
one.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.